I was an accounting major in college. I never liked it, and I never wanted it, but I'm very, very glad I took it. Aside from the fact that it has been valuable in my career, it turned out that when I finally got to the law school, at that time, I have no idea what the requirements are now, but at that time there were none. And people came who were sociology majors and math majors and history majors, and in the second year in the corporation course, they didn't know what a share of stock was. They didn't know what a corporation was. So the professor, L’53, who was quite a colorful person, stopped the course, and he said, anybody who hasn't had accounting is going to take it right now and put a course in accounting into the law school. Well, that's not why I came, except that I really was not interested in being an accountant. Now, when I graduated from college as an accountant, I got a job. I'm just talking about just as we drove in here. I got a job in a kids' clothing factory as the assistant to the plant manager. And the job consisted of trouble, meaning it's the same as it's been in the 60 or some years since. People come with a problem, and the idea is to solve the problem. Well, in this factory, there were problems galore about the employees and the compensation and the garments and the colors, and every day there was a problem, and it was my job to solve the problem. But I didn't want to be in that place all my life. There was a guy in my neighborhood who was in law school, and there was another guy actually on my street who was in law school. And at night, we used to sit on the step, and they would talk about the cases in the law school. And I thought, that sounds pretty good. And I thought, I'll try it. And I remember, it's 1950, the basis upon which I made my decision, and that was, if I don't do it now, I was then 24 years old, I guess I never will, so I'll take a shot. And that's what I did. So, in college, I took a course in philosophy. I'm not changing the subject. And one of those very smart people, like Socrates or Aristotle or somebody, said, know thyself. It's really important because people are different. It's not one size fits all. So you have to know what makes you go. And I came to the conclusion pretty easily that I didn't want to be a specialist of anything. I want to do something different every day. So the answer is, I practiced as a sole practitioner. I was a legal writing teacher here at the law school, and I was a law clerk in the common pleas court all at once, which required a lot of running around, because when you have to be at 2 or 3 places at the same time, it creates a problem. But that was great, because in the court, I was in the trial court in the common pleas, and at that time, unlike now, the judges did everything. Now they do one thing. One of my classmates did just murders for like 25 years. Just murders. Well, you get to know a lot about how people kill each other, but you know, it's not that interesting is when you do murders and you do robberies and you do zoning and you do adoption or whatever. So I was doing these 3 things at once. And it was great, but I was running, criminal, civil. And then came an opportunity to become a corporate counsel. and be an owner of the company and do the international. Now, every year since I got out of law school, the day after the bar exam, I went to Europe. And I had this idea in my head as a kid. I want to see the whole world. Not most or almost, but I want to see the entire world. And I have. Not all at once. In the olden days, they used to say, see America first. Well, I drove a car, not all at once, every American state, every capital of the state, every large city, every college town, and many natural parks, and Canada from Vancouver to Prince Edward Island, all the way across. And then I went to Mexico on foot. I went on a bus, and there was a flood, and the bridge was out, and the Corps of Engineers had put a pontoon bridge across the Rio Grande River. So I walked across the bridge to Mexico. And then Central America and South America and on and on. And then came this opportunity in the company to do the international. So when I went on my own, it was third-class trains, which don't even exist anymore, wooden benches and animals and stuff. But when I went on business, no more third class. And among other things, I went to Japan every year for 20 years, and I did significant transactions in Japan, Germany, England, Belgium, and France, all on my own. No co-counsel, no local counsel, and worked out all right. And then over the years, we had business, we had a company in Israel, we did the biggest deal in the industry in Iran, and it was a lot of fun, and that gave me a little variety. Our class, I would say, is unique. Now, maybe they all say that, but our class, I'm sure, is unique in that it's now 62 years since we left here. We get together every month. Now, you know, I saw the expression on your face. Now, you know that normally a lot of our alumni aren't interested once every 5 years, let alone every month. Now, very unfortunately, we're now dwindling, and we're dwindling at an accelerating rate. But we still, now next week, we're going to have our monthly lunch. And these people, it was an extraordinary group. Now, I guess they all say that too, but if I remember, there was an experiment with us. The LSAT was not universally utilized. Now I understand there's some kind of controversy about how much to use it and so forth. But in those days, as I understand it, here they decided they would have an experiment and admit students based on the grade in the LSAT with a minimum number. And if they don't get that number, you don't get in. And they didn't care, what your college record was or anything else, you had to get that number and see what happens. Well, what happened was, I think, for whatever reason, it was an extraordinary group. We had, for example, the president judge of Philadelphia, the president judge of Montgomery County, the first black chief justice in the history of the United States. We had the first woman DA in the history of Pennsylvania. We had the federal judge in Philadelphia. We had professor at the Berkeley Law School, professor at the Connecticut Law School, then at Rutgers. And these people, the youngest U.S. attorney, he was the U.S. attorney for the state of Delaware, and then he was a lawyer at the New York Times. Now these people in the law, I would say, we had the law clerk for the Chief Justice of Pennsylvania, and we had 3 other guys who were law clerks. 2 guys were law clerks on the Supreme Court of the United States. So this group, was, for just the samples I'm giving you, well, it was an extraordinary group. And the other thing that I think that is unusual is that we have stuck together. We see each other. I talk to classmates almost every day, 62 years. And I don't think that's normal. Because, like I say, the people are not the random, because I think they were selected by means of this requirement at the admission, maybe. But this place, I really liked being here. I was on the board of the alumni for like 20 years. And I used to come, the board got invited to everything, lectures or parties or whatever. And I went to everything. If I got invited, I went. And the other board members, they never went to anything. So I, get in conversations with the students. And there were times when, I don't know, 1970s or whenever, when they just didn't like being here, they didn't like each other, and they were not happy. But we didn't have that experience. We really had fun. Like, to give you an idea of the relationship between us and the faculty. And now we worked hard. I mean, we worked hard. But we had fun. The relationship between us and the faculty, we played little tricks on them, which had some significance. Like, for example, Clark Bice. Do you know who Clark Bice was? You know what the paper chase was? Well, the paper chase was about Clark Bice. There's no question. He was Professor Whitehead, like curmudgeon. Then he left here and he went to Harvard, but that was after. And but he was an excellent teacher. Contracts was his thing. And it's interesting. I saw on the television, I'm not changing the subject, saw on the television not long ago an interview. Justice Souter had retired off the Supreme Court of the United States. And he's being interviewed by Charlie Rose. And he's talking about, and then he gets on to his law school days. And for some reason, he talks about his professor, Bice. And for some reason, it just happened. He talked about Professor Bice, and he had this expression, you put the rabbit in the hat, which means you assume your conclusion. Now, of course, when he was our teacher, he used to say, you put the rabbit in the hat. So what we did, we got a top hat, and we put it up on his table. And when he came in, and on top of the hat was a contracts case book, he took the book off, and out came a rabbit. Now, as an example. Then there was George Haskins. George Haskins taught property. And George Haskins, he wasn't interested in anything past the 13th century. I mean, he was, old statutes and obsolete. But he was a consultant for the Pennsylvania Railroad, because the Pennsylvania Railroad owned so much real estate. We had people who went to work at the railroad, and they told me I had no records, and it was so extensive. So they had Haskins as an consultant for the property. And since he was working for the railroad, we got an outfit with gloves and striped hat and all that for George Haskins. And then there was Ray Bradley and Paul Bruton. they both did taxes, and they were both writing a book together about taxes. So what we did, and the faculty had some kind of a mail place where they had inter-faculty. So we wrote a note from one to the other one, from Bradley to Bruton, about this book they're writing, and we put in there all this jargon and the taxes about, what do you think of, Cumbull 29J2 in light of section 2814? And then we learned later that both of them were scratching our heads, what the hell is with this guy? Eddie Bradley, who was a classmate of ours, that was Ray's brother. And then one day, of course, Professor, there was another professor whose son was a student. So like with Bradley, of course he would never call him his brother. So when he asked a question, nobody put their hand up except Bradley. So he would call on everybody and everybody would say no, and they didn't read the case. So it was like little things, but it showed you we had such a good relationship with these people. And they were all really, really very good teachers. And the dean, that was Jeff Fordham. We had 3 deans in 3 years. That's a record. Now there's 2 deans here today, I understand, but we had 3. The first year, Owen Roberts came off the Supreme Court, taught first year of torts. Now I did one of these things about Owen Roberts. And then the second year came Paul Bruton, acting dean. Then came Jeff Fordham. And I would say, he really became a friend. He's the one who hired me as a legal writing teacher. And then after some years, he retired. And he was living in Salt Lake City. And I see a letter in the Wall Street Journal. There was an article about professional sports. And it's not sports, it's just a business and money, and that's all there is to it. And then comes a letter about it's a business and money, and Jefferson B. Fordham. So I wrote him a letter. I said, I saw your erudite, well-written letter in the journal. I want you to know I agree with every word you say. So he sends me a letter that says, I got your erudite, well-written. So that was the relationship we had with the faculty, and it was like one happy family, more or less. Well, I come back, it was one of the deans. It was either Colin Diver or Jim Friedman. I got to know all these guys. I forget who it was. He said, you are the denizen of the law school. Because I used to come, whatever it was, I came. As a matter of fact, in June, I'm going to go to Rome because I invited my way in to a thing called the University of Pennsylvania Law School Alumni in Europe. Do you know about this organization, Plus?
Sure.
Well, I've been going to, I saw, like I said, I invited my way in, and I went to Vienna, and I went to Prague, and I went to Oxford, and I went to St. Petersburg, and so forth and so on. Now this year it was supposed to be Kiev, and are you going to go? No. And I got to know these people from Europe. So it was here 2 years ago. So I decided I'm going to have a dinner party for them. So I sent out an email to all of them, and I said, I'm not a European lawyer, and I'm not a LLM. But I am an imposter, and I've been coming to your interloper and imposter. And then this Lars Peterson from Sweden, he sends me an email and says, you, imposter, capital letters, never, you're one of us. So that's why I got it. It's really nice people. you make the best of what you can get. I'm not recommending everybody have 3 jobs, but I could have been a law clerk like everybody else and just be a law clerk and be done with it. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to do other things. And in Hebrew, it means bar means son of, and Khan is the high priest, and I am descended from the high priest. And I had my DNA analyzed recently to see, and it's really, the National Geographic does this thing. And it's really just, I'm going to say it's unbelievable and mind-boggling. Now it's the National Geographic, it's not just, they claim to go back 65,000 years.